It's Monday, September 15th, 2025. We're picking up the pieces, one foot in front of the other, and why loving your enemies doesn't mean they escape consequences. Next on the AM Update. Utah Governor Spencer Cox said Sunday the man arrested in connection with the murder of Charlie Kirk is not cooperating with authorities days after he was booked into a Utah County jail. Well, Cox said on ABC News this week that the suspect, identified as Tyler Robinson, is not cooperating. He said all the people around him are. The governor's comments came after the 22-year-old was arrested Friday after the manhunt spanned more than 30 hours and ultimately concluded when the family friend of the suspect contacted authorities. Spencer Cox on CNN also added and put a finer point that it was indeed left-wing political indoctrination that caused Tyler Robinson to assassinate and martyr Charlie Kirk.
You told the Wall Street Journal that it is, quote, very clear to us and to the investigators that this was a person who was deeply indoctrinated with leftist ideology. Can you elaborate on that and be more specific?
Well, sure. So that information comes from the people around him, from his family members and friends. That's how we got that information. Again, there's so much more that we're learning and so much more that we will learn. There will be official charges will be filed on Tuesday, and there will be much more evidence and information available then. And again, we're interviewing all kinds of people, everyone that knows him, and trying to learn more about what that motive actually was.
One of the people who knew the assassin, Tyler Robinson, was his now alleged live-in partner, who was identified over the weekend as a dude who thought he was a woman. Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, Tyler Robinson, was living with a so-called transgender partner who was in the process of transitioning from male to female, taking hormone-changing drugs. That individual, who was named later as Lance Twiggs, a 22-year-old also, he lived at the same address where Robinson lived. A relative of Twiggs actually confirmed to the New York Post and other outlets on Saturday that they were indeed roommates. The family member, who asked not to be identified, said Twiggs was the black sheep of their St. George, Utah family, but declined to speculate on a romantic relationship between the two men. She said she didn't know her relative's politics or whether Twiggs was transitioning to become a woman, but added that it wouldn't surprise her. Reporting from independent journalist Andy No seems to indicate and confirm that Twiggs was indeed attempting to become a woman, which of course cannot happen. There's a lot more from the fallout and everything that's happened. Of course, there are just left-wing ghouls galore that continued to shriek in excitement over the weekend. I just made the decision. This is a morning podcast. I've been exposed to enough of that. I'm not going to expose you to much of that in the days ahead. So a lot of lefties are getting fired right now. Not enough for their gloating. The First Amendment means you can say whatever you want without going to jail unless it's incitement or unless you're screaming fire in a crowded movie theater. You do not have the right to a job. And a lot of left-wingers across the country are experiencing that right now. On Friday night, Charlie Kirk's widow, Erika, addressed the nation in one of the biggest displays of strength I've ever witnessed.
2 days ago, my husband, Charlie, went to see the face of his Savior and his God. Charlie always said that when he was gone, he wanted to be remembered for his courage and for his faith. And one of the final conversations that he had on this earth, my husband witnessed for his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Now and for all eternity, he will stand at his Savior's side, wearing the glorious crown of a martyr.
Amen. Erika Kirk went on, and there was absolutely no undertones of both siding this, no undertones of now is the time we might unite. Erika Kirk made it extraordinarily clear what needs to happen next.
Already I have seen the worldwide outpouring of love for my husband. I've heard the testimonies from people my husband inspired to get married, to start families, to seek out a relationship with God. It's the most important one of all. The evildoers responsible for my husband's assassination have no idea what they have done. They killed Charlie because he preached a message of patriotism, faith, and of God's merciful love. But they should all know this. If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea. You have no idea what you just have unleashed across this entire country.
I saw that yesterday morning in church, and I pray you did as well. My pastor did a phenomenal job. He preached a little mini message at the very beginning of the service yesterday and handled it in an extremely good way. There is something happening around the country. This has shaken every single true believer to their core. And it's the message of Charlie's widow, Erika. I think that is indicative for all of us. And I've never, like I said, I just don't think this can go. I don't think this can be overstated. I have never seen such strength as what Erika Kirk displayed there. God bless her. God bless her and her family. Continue to pray for the Kirk family, that there would be a peace that passes all understanding that comes across them, because that's the only way they're going to get through. And it sounds like Erika Kirk is not backing down. Well, where do we go from here? White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller started to lay out what needs to happen.
And let me tell you something I've not shared with anybody, but the last message that Charlie Kirk gave to me before he joined his Creator in heaven was he said that we have to dismantle and take on the radical left organizations in this country that are fomenting violence. That was the last message that he sent me before that assassin stole him from all of us. And we are going to do that under President Trump's leadership. I don't care how. It could be a RICO charge, a conspiracy charge, conspiracy against the United States, insurrection, but we are going to do what it takes to dismantle the organizations and the entities that are fomenting riots, that are doxing, that are trying to inspire terrorism, and that are committing acts of wanton violence. It has to stop. And my message is to all of the domestic terrorists in this country spreading this evil hate: you want us to live in fear? We will not live in fear, but you will live in exile, because the power of law enforcement under President Trump's leadership will be used to find you, will be used to take away your money, take away your power, and if you've broken the law, to take away your freedom, Sean.
That is White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller making it clear in no uncertain terms what must happen next, at least from the governmental perspective. I think for all of us, Charlie Kirk's example is one that we must follow in our day-to-day lives and how we relate to those around us. But the question of what the government now does, that is far more broad. Yes, Antifa, and there was Antifa writing and Marxist undertones, Trantifa undertones in the engravings on the bullets of Kirk's assassin. Yes, it would be a grave mistake to limit whatever comes next, whatever consequences come next, to just Antifa or Trantifa. That would be a grave mistake. Because I promise you, if the Trump administration over the next 3.5 years does not tear down the leftist power structure brick by brick, and that is a tall order, but it must happen within the next 10 to 15 years, I do believe that we will have a dictator rise to power in this country. And it might be a right-wing dictator. It might. And I'm not saying that for effect. I've read a few history books. When you're told that we can shoot you, we can murder you, and there's nothing you can do about that, and there's no consequences that we will experience, that will be what happens. So I pray the Trump administration is up to the task. I know one person who is not up to the task, however, is Oklahoma Senator James Lankford. Listen to this tripe.
Well, I would say if there's someone preparing to be able to take out an aggressive act against someone or to be able to violate the law, that is the role of law enforcement to be able to protect Americans. We need to be careful in how we talk about this, whether it is talking about white nationalists and preparing to be able to attack and to be able to carry an attack, or it is somebody like a Timothy McVeigh that hated the government intensely and in my state 30 years ago murdered 168 people in Oklahoma City, or whether it is a leftist group that is interested in actually attacking a pro-life center that we saw several years ago, or whether it's carrying out some other act of terrorism or trying to be able to intimidate people. We should have equal application of the law to saying if you're choosing to be able to carry out an aggressive, violent act, that should be something that we actually try to interdict anytime that we possibly can.
So the first example James Lankford brings up there when talking about, we all just saw what happened last Wednesday. We all just saw that Charlie Kirk's martyred body is not even in the ground yet. And your Republican senator from the reddest state in the country, Oklahoma, leads off with white nationalism and an event that took place, the federal building bombing in Oklahoma City, an event that took place when Charlie Kirk was a year old. That is your Republican senator from the reddest state in the union. He's up for re-election in 2028. And by the way, in case you want to know, you want to let James Lankford know what you think about leading off, as we're still grieving, leading off with white nationalism. His Oklahoma City office is 405-231-4941. 405-231-4941. That's his office in Oklahoma City. In Washington, it's 202-224-5754. 202-224-5754. James Lankford, the Republican senator from Oklahoma, going on CNN while we're still grieving and the tears are still flowing, talking about white nationalism and the Oklahoma City bombing, which took place when Charlie Kirk was a year old. Just despicable, pathetic. Let him know what you think about those comments. There's some other news happening. We'll cover that when we come back. Over the weekend, President Trump announced plans to deploy federal resources to Memphis, Tennessee, as a part of the Trump administration's aggressive push to dismantle the rampant violent crime fueled by failed Democrat governance in major cities. With Memphis enduring the highest violent crime rate in the nation, President Trump's actions have already been welcomed by elected officials in the state. Here's Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem.
Well, the president will be working with the local mayor and the governor in Tennessee to make sure that operations are streamlined and that we're effective and that we're going after the worst of the worst, those criminals that are there, getting them off the streets and making it safer. So it's good to have local leaders that understand the importance of the work that this president is doing, and that you can't have a successful society unless they can be free, unless they can go out and pursue their dreams and build businesses and live in their homes and send their kids to school and not have to worry about them at night. So the president is very engaged on this issue. He's grateful for the partnership of those local leaders, and we're looking forward to making a big difference there for the people that are in Tennessee.
So Washington, D.C. to now Memphis, Tennessee. The crackdown on crime continues. International news. President Trump in a Truth Social post over the weekend, quote, "I'm ready to do major sanctions on Russia when all NATO nations have agreed and started to do the same thing. And when all NATO nations stop buying oil from Russia, as you know, NATO's commitment to win has been far less than 100%, and the purchase of Russian oil by some has been shocking. It greatly weakens your negotiating position and bargaining power over Russia. Anyway, I'm ready to go when you are. Just say when." So there is President Trump putting the onus back on NATO members. Well, let's go back to, of course, the topic at hand, obviously. And over the weekend, there were a number of places that paid homage to the martyr Charlie Kirk. Saw Chris Pratt, the actor who is really at the zenith of his fame right now. He was one of the first to issue a message of sympathy and prayers for the Kirk family. I saw Chris Martin of Coldplay during a concert. I think it was in the UK. He actually said, "Hey, send your love to the Kirk family, even if you don't agree with them." Coldplay is one of the biggest bands in the world. One person that stood out to me as kind of an interesting source of some of these well wishes and sympathies is Oregon football coach Dan Lanning, who just found out that Charlie Kirk was a big Oregon Ducks fan. He was asked about how he handled the events of last week with his team during the week.
There's been a lot going on in the country the last week. Have you addressed that with your team? How kind of you handled that?
Yeah, talk about, I think the U.S. could learn a lot from our locker room. I think the people in this world can learn a lot from our locker room. You walk in that locker room, you got guys of different races, guys of different backgrounds, different religions, and you got a team that loves each other. Like tons of differences, where they come from, what they deal with, and ultimately you got a team that loves each other. And I think we're missing some of that in our country. You know, you talk about, I recently found out like Charlie Kirk was a Oregon fan, right? I didn't know that. I heard for his wife, Erika, and their kids. Like that sort of evil should never exist in our country. And that's what it is, it's evil. Like, but I remember having to explain that to my family, right? I remember sitting down with my kids and explaining what happened. And they're talking about people talking about it at school, and it's just sad, right? But it's just as sad. You know, every day it seems like we deal with some sort of violence that's going on in our country, whether it's, school kids in Colorado or kids in Minnesota at churches. I mean, life matters, and I think we've lost sight of that. But I wish the world could learn a little bit of something from our locker room, because we got a bunch of people with differences, and what you got in there is a bunch of people who love there. And there's some people that'll be disappointed about how much I said about this, right? And there'll be some people that are disappointed that I didn't say enough. Right, and I really don't care, right? What I do care about is if you disagree with me, if you hate me, if you don't like me, just know this, I love you. I absolutely love you, right? And life matters. And that's no way that Charlie should experience that, his family should experience that. There's no way that evil should exist in this world. And
So there is Oregon football coach Dan Lanning addressing the Kirk assassination martyrdom. And he went on to do a both sides thing. I'm giving him a free pass because he was rambling at that point, and he's a football coach. I'm just telling you, if this prompts probably a normie, maybe he's right-wing a little bit, but probably a normie like Dan Lanning, to just say, oh, whoa, this is evil. And he said, this is just evil. What's going on right now? What do you think the a little bit more politically in tuned normies, what do they think right now? What do they think on this Monday morning? I'm telling you, this is a watershed moment. I didn't really particularly appreciate, I thought he did a good job. Didn't really appreciate Spencer Cox on Friday morning in the announcement of the arrest of Tyler Robinson. I didn't appreciate him turning that press conference into a Spencer Cox, here's my political brand thing. But one thing he did say that is true is that this is indeed a watershed moment. I want to tell you a little bit more about Charlie Kirk, at least the way that I have perceived him. And I know I've seen this sentiment echoed numerous times. 8 years ago, I would have said he's just another Trump influencer, kind of an evangelical tinged Trump influencer. But as I said on Thursday's program, it was abundantly clear in the ensuing years, especially the last 3 or 4 years, I've heard things said about Charlie that are not said about most, like 95% of conservative commentators, influencers, talking heads, power players, that he was truly a good man, that he truly believed what he said he believed. President Trump, I think it was on Friday, said very much the same. It wasn't so much that he was really talented on the air or anything, or talented as just this personality. It's just that he really believed. He really believed. That's what President Trump said. And it became more obvious as time went on, especially with the clip I'm about to play for you, that Charlie Kirk really was a serious thought leader. And thought leader is a term that's thrown around willy-nilly. But I think I've played this clip before on the AM update. I think it was earlier this year that Charlie Kirk sat down for one of those kind of behind-the-scenes shows or post-show shows with Bill Maher.
He is risen.
He is risen indeed, Bill.
Why do we say that in the present tense?
Because it is a constant truth in our life.
He is risen. I always noticed that was interesting to me.
That's a really important question, actually.
It is. Tell me.
Well, because the fact that he is risen transcends time. it's not just in the present sense. It's that of all time, that promise is accessible to all of us. And so it's a proclamation to all people. Because if you said, hey, he was risen, it's like, it's just merely a historical event. It almost underplays the metaphysics of it.
I'm just always fascinated the way really, really fine intellectual minds employ themselves for the purpose of arguing things that are so inarguable.
But
It does, because it's almost like a challenge. Like, I'm so smart that I can make this thing, which is so stupid, seem like a real. I'm kidding.
No, it's fine.
No, but you get where I'm coming from. Like, I'm going to take something that is so anti-intellectual, even though I can argue like an intellectual.
However, but you have to acknowledge, even the greatest minds of history have been mesmerized by the scriptures. Isaac Newton, Thomas Aquinas.
Well,
Isaac Newton wrote more about biblical prophecy than even physics. And so there's something about the scriptures that are intellectual, that does push your limits. And that's what I think is so beautiful about our faith, is it can be accessible to everyone, but also infinitely nourishing in exploration.
So there's Charlie Kirk witnessing to Bill Maher on his own show. I think we played that clip before. And you can hear it there. Very calmly, he knows what he's talking about, to a very smart liberal, and talking in a way that is accessible to Bill Maher. You know, the way that Charlie Kirk communicated to college students is a different way than he might communicate to a Bill Maher. You have to know your audience, and it's clips like that that indicate and illustrate perfectly that he really was more than just an influencer, more than just the head of a movement. He was really a serious thinker, Charlie Kirk. When we come back, air analysis, loving your enemies does not mean your enemies escape consequences. It's coming up next. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. Very short this morning. I just want you to know that forgiveness is not the same thing as escaping from consequences. Loving your enemies does not mean letting your enemies escape consequences. I can't believe how many people I've seen on the right already say, no. It's not the Christian thing to want to have consequences for your enemies. It's not the Christian thing to do. That's not the role of the government. Punishing evil is the role of government. I hope Romans 13 is written on the hearts of everyone with the power to do something about this just left-wing power structure. Whether it's academia, we don't fully know what or whom radicalized Tyler Robinson. My hunch is that it's just the darkest cesspools on the corners of the internet. That's what my inclination is, but we don't know that for sure yet. We don't know if there's a criminal conspiracy. It surely seems like there is. Tyler Robinson was communicating to someone about what he was doing last Wednesday. But for the people in charge with the power and ability to ensure that this ideology, this demonic doctrines of demons, that is so infested in one side of the political debate right now, I pray that Romans 13 is written upon their hearts in stone, that they apply being a terror to the evildoer to the nth degree. I pray that. That is the right and just thing to do. Loving your enemies means defeating them while you have agency. You know, the difference in a lot of ways between this era and the early church era is that we here in the United States, we have so much more agency than the early church that did. That's why we get to live in homes and not catacombs. But to the extent that the early church did have agency, you saw the Apostle Paul practice that. So loving your enemies means defeating them, both for your and their good, while you have agency. It does not mean letting them murder you till you and your offspring have none. Anyone telling you a different message is either a subversive and or naive. Consequences does not mean that you're not forgiving. Consequences doesn't mean that you're not loving your enemies. And yes, we must pray for those who persecute you. And I prayed we gathered around yesterday morning after our pastor's message about Charlie Kirk. We just gathered around with people I didn't know, and we just prayed, and that's what I prayed. I prayed that anyone who has a heart, a soul that's still tender, help this situation wake them up and bring them to faith in Jesus Christ. That's what I prayed for. But I'm also praying that anyone who is engaged in this type of wickedness, this just type of recalcitrant sadism, I pray that they are held accountable to the fullest extent. You can pray both things at the same time. That's going to do it for today. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.